Welcome to the Dropping Gems con Muchos Colores podcast. I am your host, Arely Lagunas. This is an audio community where we own and share our stories as trailblazer moms, crafting a unique and meaningful work lifestyle, leading with passion, breaking barriers, and chasing bold dreams on our own terms. Celebrating our Latina motherhood voices to bring you genuine insights of the highs, the lows, and in-betweens of working moms from a first-gen Latina lens. We don't have to travel this journey alone. Let's get started.
Good afternoon. Today we are very excited because we have a very special guest. Her name is Linette. Linette is a Latina portrait photographer and creative director who has an amazing story to share. Linette graduated with a bachelor's in communication at the University of Illinois at Urbana Champaign in 2012 and started her career in photography in 2014. Quickly becoming a rising star in her industry. However, life took a drastic turn when she had to do a cross-country move with her family, where she welcomed her second child a month later. As a mother of two without a village, Linette slowly lost control of her purpose, but through self-discovery, moving back home, and psychotherapy, Linette was able to find her footing again. Raising multicultural children, Linette's goal is to build a community and empower women through photography to see and be the best version of themselves. Her journey has been both inspiring and uplifting, and we're excited to hear all about Linette's journey. So can't wait to start and hear it directly from Linette, her experience as a mother and a photographer and creative director. Definitely a conversation you don't want to miss. So welcome to our show, Linette. It's a pleasure to have you on this episode today.
Thank you so much for having me, Arely.
And I love hearing about your story because there's so much information and so much that as a mom myself, I can relate to you. So I am very curious and also excited to hear about your journey and how you were involved with photography and as a creative director. And one of the questions that I always have is, when you were growing up, is this something you envisioned yourself doing as an adult? What did you want to be when you were a child?
So that's a great question. Growing up, I grew up on the west end of Logan Square in mid-90s to late 90s, and it was rough. It was a really rough neighborhood. And I remember being a little girl and always wanting to be a, wait for it, homicide detective.
Okay.
I wanted to be a detective because I wanted to partake in helping stopping the violence around. I witnessed and experienced multiple things that as a child no one should. And ironically, I am now not a detective, but I do shoot people, but in a photography way.
That is really true. Yes.
Yeah.
It gives us a good picture of, how the neighborhood you grew up. But despite of that, having known that, here is Linette, a young child who aspires to do change, right? To help in the community. And now we are here as an adult, and now you are a photographer and creative director. At what age did you decide that you wanted to pursue this career path?
So that's a great question. I have always been in love and loved photography, as it all actually started as a little girl. I'm the youngest of three. And you know how it is when you become a mom, that very first one, it's like really exciting. And Arely, I don't know how many kids you have, but I was the last one, and I would go through albums of my brothers and sisters and families, and my mom will tell me stories about my tios. My family's from Puerto Rico, so not everyone is in Chicago. And photography was a way for me to connect with my family, and also gave me that perspective of not having photos of yourself and not having many of them. So when I graduated, I took a couple of classes in photography at college. And when I graduated, I just started taking photos and connecting with people, and people kept asking me, "Hey, you're the girl that takes pictures. Can you take photos of me?" And it developed into something amazing.
I would even say, passions evolve into what you do today. And I personally love photography. I love taking pictures, not so much of myself. I just feel like I want to capture moments. And
Yeah.
my husband and my oldest child, so I have three, but my oldest child and my husband say, I think in your other life, you were a photographer,
I
right?
love that.
Because I do feel there's a lot of value in photography. Kudos to you, because I am sure that in your journey, you're doing a big service to others and an impact. And one of the things that I love about learning about your journey is how you're using photography to help others, right? To empower women. I
Yeah.
love that. I really love that, because that really resonates with a lot of the things that I do as well. And it's really nice to see other perspectives outside of my world. So my world is more about career and leadership. That's my background, human resources. So I love that piece. And to know that you're able to do that through photography, it's just almost like music to my ears, because I love that. I think that as Latina women, we need leaders like you. We need individuals like you who empower others, right? And especially women, we need that in our community.
Well, I definitely appreciate that, Areli. I do, you did mention something. You said you like taking pictures, but you're usually not in them. And that is where I will say my empowerment started, because as a mom, you're the glue, you're the backbone to the family, and mommy runs the show and the emotions and pretty much the heavy load. And obviously, dads play a big part, especially those that are involved. But that legacy piece, or, sometimes as moms, we're so worried about how we look and, oh my gosh, my hair's so messy. No, 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 no. I'll just take the picture. Or dads are, I don't know, they don't think like us. So they're like, I don't know, I barely have any photos on my phone. But being able to empower you to say, Areli, even if it's not me, right? Even if it's not you booking a session with me, but me encouraging you and other moms and women, get in the picture, get in the
Yes.
shot, no matter what.
I do recognize, right? That's seeing a picture of you as a family complete is definitely gonna um, be a memory that's gonna be cherished, with your family. So I will definitely take that advice as I take more pictures, because as you know, with kids, they grow up so fast that next thing you know, it's like they're in high school.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a quote that I stand by that says, your kids one day will look for pictures of you. What will they find? And the other day we were looking through our phones, and a memory popped up, and it was a picture of my husband, and I have two kids. So it was my two kids, and my daughter, she's only 4. And right away, she's only 4. And she asked, Mommy, where were you? You're not in this picture, Mom. Why are you not here? And it just got my mind turning. I'm like, like, even for me, it's a reminder of get in the picture too, because in their minds and their developing minds, sometimes they also, wonder where was mom at this time?
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. And nowadays there's so many gadgets, right, that you can use so that you can take a picture with your family, whether it's a timer or, a gadget. Would you agree with that?
Yes. So I always encourage families, just everyday moments,
Mhm.
right? Even setting up a timer and getting in the picture. Now, one of the things that I focus on with my photography as a creative director, where that comes in, is the entire experience. So think of it this way. If you just take a picture, right? Like, let's say you're stressed out, mom life, right? You're stressed out and you're like, okay, I'm going to be in the picture, but you don't really remember anything from that photo. You probably just, it's just a picture I took, and I don't really remember what happened, because when our minds are stressed, we can't retain information. So with my approach, what we do is I meet you where you are and I validate. Motherhood is hard. You have a lot on your plate. You probably don't want to take these family photos, and that's okay. Things are crazy, but it's important. And here's why. And then slowly you start to exhale and you're like, I feel seen. I feel understood. Oh, I'm not alone. So you drop all these expectations, because there are a lot of photographers that have so much expectations, like arrive on time, arrive dressed, arrive smiling, and make sure that your kids take their naps and eat their snacks, because I am not trying to deal with crazy kids. And as a mom, I came across those photographers, when taking my own family photos, and I was like, what is going on? What do you mean change my child's nap schedule? I can't do that. So with this ideology that you're being supported as you take these photos, I want you to remember the wines. I want you to remember how they threw a fit, because 10 years from now, they're probably going to be in their room, not really caring about, bugging you and following you around. And as time goes on, I want you to be able to, let's just picture your children off, to school or living in their own lives. And, you go down to your basement, you have this little box and it's dusty, and you open it and you see a print and it's of your family 30 years ago. And all of a sudden you just get a rush of feelings, because you felt validated, you felt seen, you were stressed, but not, you were open to something different. And that is my job, to help you see that, and help you see that in 40 plus years, or even now, but also in the future.
Yes, I love that. I really do, because I agree with you. I've taken family pictures before, especially around the holidays, and when my kids were more small, right? They're a little older now. It could be a little stressful going and taking family pictures. One, because they're crabby or whatever it is. Maybe their schedule was altered, but to know that as a photographer, you're understanding, you're just trying to capture, the best moments and trying to create a memory for the future. I find that helpful, as we have our audience listening. I think it's really important also, right, when they are making that decision of having family pictures, is to pick someone who is aligned with what they want to accomplish with this photography, with this photo shoot. It would definitely make me feel a little bit of a relief. That's the expectation and the service delivery that my photographer will provide. Definitely, that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the flip side to that, I have this other key piece where, as moms, again, life is busy. We tend to put ourselves last. We tend to, fill everybody's cup while we are pouring from an empty cup. And when it comes to empowering women and empowering mothers, I also do studio shoots, or really anywhere, where I include the hair and the makeup. I work with a makeup and hair artist, and basically I give you that red carpet, like, you think of like Rihanna, right? And how,
Yes.
these women that are famous have these nannies and great life and people that work out for them. I don't know how they end up, whatever the case is. And I want to give you that experience now, without necessarily having to feel like you need to be a celebrity to get that
Yes.
experience. So I give that celebrity experience because us moms, we are celebrities. Like I have 2 kids and a husband that just want to know where I'm at every day, every time, they're yearning for mom, and why not give other women and mothers that experience to, fill your cup, so that when you leave a session with me, not only do you have those tangible photos of being empowered, and, a lot of people feel nervous, and that's normal when they come to me and they're like,
Mhm.
I don't like taking photos, but it's deeper than that. And
Yes.
we dig through that before the shoot even happens, so that again, when you come in, you can exhale. And then sometimes, family or moms, or, women that have families, they're like, can I bring my family after? Yes. Like, schedule a reservation at a restaurant. Mom goes first, bring the family in, and then you guys can go and have an experience, make an experience out of it. And the kids, and, the moms and women that don't even have moms too, they just love it.
Mhm.
Something about putting yourself first and actually feeling like you have a village that understands you.
Yes, yes, right. It's something that we usually leave in the back burner, and I think we just have to do a better job at reminding ourselves, like, no, it shouldn't go on the back burner. It's a necessity, something we have to do, right? Because we are pouring into others, so we need to have our cup overflowing. You talked a little bit about your journey, how you became a mom of 2, and at the same time you had some life changes. You had to move cross country. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What you were feeling at that time, and how you were able to go through the journey with self-discovery? What helped you, get back into your purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll first start off with I was raised by a single mom of 3. And we, given the environment where we live, I was taught, you keep your head down and you keep going. You keep your head down and you keep going, which
Mhm.
is something that I know, our Latino community is very, it's very prevalent in our community, where when we were younger, so we don't talk about feelings, right? We don't talk about Bruno. No, 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 no. We just keep going and keep going. So initially, when I moved, I was 8 months pregnant. We moved to San Diego due to my husband got a new job opportunity. And everyone tells me, oh my gosh, San Diego, wow, you must have loved it. I would love to move out there one day. I was there one day too, and then I moved. And a month later, I had our daughter. We didn't have any family or friends there. And I mean, it was to the point where I held her in until my mother-in-law flew into San Diego. And I literally had her a few hours later because I was so stressed with who's going to watch my son. He was only 2 at the time, or barely 2, or not 2 yet. And I couldn't trust anyone,
Mhm.
imagine. So
Yes.
this was in 2018. And it was really hard. I mean, I remember it was really hard, but because I didn't have the tools to check in with myself and really see how I was doing. I mean, I remember going to that first month checkup
Mhm.
with the doctor, and I just show up and I'm smiling and I'm like, I'm gonna pass this test. Like, I am okay. Yes. Because I'm like, can you imagine if I have to tell someone that I'm not feeling okay? Like, that's just me. Like,
Mhm.
it's probably not normal.
Mhm.
In reality, if I had that, village and support, I would feel okay with tapping someone on the shoulder and saying, like, hey, I'm not feeling okay right now.
Mhm.
But I saw the worst, my patience losing, my purpose. It was just really tough with a 2-year-old and a newborn. And it wasn't until I started seeing a therapist,
Mhm.
which that in itself is difficult because I was seeing a white woman
Mhm.
and she was very intrigued with my life and my upbringing. And it didn't feel like actually getting help. She was like, What? You saw what growing up? So having the right therapist that understands, that knows about, you know, basically your upbringing and has experience on that is so important, because I could have just given up. But
Mhm.
ultimately we decided, the pandemic hit, and
Mhm.
oh, the whole world shut down, you know that.
Yes.
And I was like, welcome to my world, guys. This is where I thrive. I have been in the hole like 2 years early.
Yes.
So that's really where I shone my light, or my light shone, because I felt that I wasn't alone. And we
Yes.
all felt that way. And I think that's how we got through COVID,
Mhm.
because we were all like, okay, well, this isn't just happening to me, it's
Mhm.
happening to all of us.
Mhm.
And ultimately, it wasn't until I moved back fully that I was able to, I talk about the stress and
Yes.
how, you need, if you don't have your stress dropped, you can't
Mhm.
process things. And
Mhm.
that's really where I discovered myself again.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. It's so, to me, this is part of the reason why I love doing this podcast. And one of the main reasons why I decided to do this podcast is I felt that listening to other stories of women who have overcome challenges, specifically moms, is healing to a lot of
Yes.
women. I can relate to a couple of things you mentioned, and sometimes we fall in this space where we feel like no one else has gone through it, or kind of like how you were saying, right? You at some point, during COVID, you felt um, seen or understood because everyone was going through it. And I know
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, when I had a difficult time, um, sometimes it felt like I was alone, like it was just me going through it, like no one else has gone through it. But then
Right.
you realize that there are so many other women that have had similar challenges, and seeing how they overcome it, or just being in the journey together, makes it even more motivating to move forward, right? It gives you a little
Yes.
bit of hope to keep
Mm-hmm.
going. Is I understand, we have wonderful women, wonderful mothers who are breaking generational situations, that are
Yeah.
healing, right? That are doing a lot of inner work, right? And at the same time, I understand there all these challenges that could happen, and also seeing them thrive, right? Seeing the
Absolutely.
breakthrough. It's just
Mm-hmm.
so powerful. One of the things that caught my attention about your story is that I relate to is I also had a hard time. I would say I had a pivoting year in 2015. I had my two youngest children the same year. So that was a blessing. It was a blessing, but I also had a lot of life changes. I had left my corporate job. I left when I was 8 months pregnant, because I was reporting to a toxic leader, and I didn't want
Yeah.
to deal with that anymore. And I wanted to come, I wanted to be ready for my son's birth, with no, in other words, no drama, right? I wanted to
Right.
be at peace, right? That was the main reason for me leaving, although I knew it was going to be a big transition, being pregnant. I had two kids in 1 year, but
Wow.
also
Irish twins. Wow.
but also my grandma passed away. So it was a lot
Mm-hmm.
of emotion to process.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very key year. And I believe that that year um, made me go through a lot of adversity. So when the pandemic hit, I felt, you mentioned something very key, and that's how I felt. Um, when you said, welcome to my world, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I feel that this adversity that happened in 2015, 2016 helped me cope with COVID, with how, the world turned around.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that had I not had I not experienced 2015 the way it panned out, I think I would have had a harder time for COVID. But, all this stuff, it's like you become resilient, right? And you
Right,
adapt. And that caught my attention, how you mentioned, that when COVID hit, you already almost like you already had the tools on
right.
how to process all this, right? Is that true?
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your story too, Areli. That's, it takes a lot of courage and strength to pull yourself out of very difficult situation. And I think a lot of people suffered during COVID. I mean, from a health standpoint, right? That was really hard. But
Mhm.
from a mental health standpoint, a lot of people didn't check in with themselves. They didn't prior to, right? And we all had to sit with our feelings and the world just stopped.
Mhm.
And because you and I had that experience of, oh man, this feels very similar, very similar. It's almost like God put us there to be able to help others get through it and use our voice. And, I ended up raising money for businesses in Chicago and San Diego, frontliners. I was like, if I am equipped and I have the tools that I need, because obviously I wasn't 100%, I was still going through my own thing, but I
Mhm.
felt, you know how it is when, or maybe we don't know, but like in war where you're just fighting and like you have wounds but you have strength to fight. And I wanted to be that person that says, listen, I know you're down right now. Stay there. Like I see you, like let's just push through. And when it's time, like, I'll take your hand and you take mine and we'll just get through this together. And
Mhm.
that's the village I was missing in San Diego. That, hey, like, how are you doing? Like, what what's going on? What's on your mind? Versus, I was just me in my head. And we all know we shouldn't believe every thought that comes in our head. And I didn't, I didn't know. So it was hard, but we always get through tough things no matter what.
Yes, yes. How do you feel now? Do you feel your village is growing? Do you feel a little bit more at ease with creating the village? Because it is important. In motherhood, it's important to have a village, whether that's
Right.
friends, whether that's family, whether that's um mentors, coaches, your village, everyone
Right.
has their own way of creating their village. So how is that looking for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we moved back in 2021. So in this summer, it'll be 2 years, which is crazy to think because I feel like we just
Yes.
moved yesterday. So I have my children are half Puerto Rican, a quarter Black, and a quarter white. So moving back, it was really important for us to live in a community of diversity or acceptance. And I really wanted to find a place where that could be possible. So we live in a small community now, a small town, and I'm in the building stages. So our son is one, or I'm sorry, he's in first grade, not one, he's in first grade, and our daughter's in preschool. And I am just forming these organic relationships with, parents that I'm meeting, with my neighbors. I'm part of the Oak Park Chamber of Commerce. So, businesses within the community. And I'm in the building stages. So I feel like 15, 20 years from now, I'll be like, yes, like, I'm barely 2 years in, but it feels good. It feels good to be in an area, close to family, close to friends, and meeting new people that are so, and of course, here's the thing, it's not going to be perfect, right? You're going to come
Right.
across people that, hey, but it's respecting your boundaries and knowing enough about yourself to say, I'm going to go through this authentically. And I
Mhm.
don't think I would have been able to do that if I wouldn't have really reflected on who I was, or looked at myself in the mirror and asked myself, who are you, and what do
Mm-hmm.
you want to do, and what kind of impact do you want to leave for the world? So now it doesn't matter if it's my son's school or my neighbor or my friends or family. I'm the same person in all those categories, and it feels good to finally be able to know, okay, craziness sometimes and all, right? Because no one's perfect. But when you get
Yes.
to learn about yourself, you're like, that's who I am. And I'm being authentic, and it's different, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you don't lead with like malicious intent, then
Mm-hmm.
you're just kind of like, this is who I am. So
Yeah. No, that is really important. I think that's a great takeaway, how learning about yourself and doing that inner work really does help, right? To
mhm.
define, what is it that you want in whatever objective you pursue, whether it's personal or professional. I use that also, with my background in HR and career coaching.
Mhm.
We do a lot of career coaching in HR as well. And it is important to do that inner work first, and
Yeah.
so that we can use that as a guide of where we want to go. So that is very important, and a good takeaway, from what you learn in this journey. You mentioned your kids are and they're small, right? They're first grade and
Yeah.
preschool. How do you cultivate work-life blend, right? You have your photography and being a creative director, and then you're also a mom, and then you're also a human. So how do you create something that works for you?
That's a great question. And I love that last point, something that works for you. And I think that's key, because for our listeners too, everyone has a different work dynamic. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, society's expectations are so demanding of parents and mothers and fathers and children. So I am first and foremost so thankful to be where I'm at, to be able to make my schedule. Right now, the littlest is in preschool, and that's half day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not ideal, but it's a lot of everything everywhere. I try to fit things in where I can. For the most part, I do photo shoots on the weekends. So for those, obviously, in the past, I used to do what you call shoot and burn, where I used to have like 10 clients in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And by taking a step back and really seeing and analyzing, hey, what's not working? My kids were demanding a lot from me. Similar to your situation, right? Where I was working a corporate job, and being able to say, this is not working for me. So right now, I don't have a set schedule, but I'm putting boundaries in place in terms of where I put my energy. But since my kids are so little, and I know that this time is not forever, I am I'm making them a priority in terms of
Mm-hmm.
making sure that um, my schedule allows the time to be with them. And if I'm not going to be with them, that I'm compensated enough to value my time and my work and everything, where it's worth it. So that looks like less clients, but being paid my worth and charging my worth for my expertise.
I love what I just heard right now, because you are 100% correct. There's so much demands in society, and also in the workplace, right?
Yeah,
And I love how you mention, your kids are small, and this is the time they need us the most, right?
right.
They're too small to take care of their own, so it is real crucial the first couple years of their life. And how you mentioned that's your priority, and that's what your focus is. And maybe right now it's taking less clients, but maybe down the road,
Mm-hmm.
that may change.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that, because you're creating your own lane, you're creating your own journey. And for a lot of us that look different, right? With I'm talking from my experience, you know, my parents didn't have the tools to do that when we were growing up. And it's so awesome to see, you know, mothers that are doing that and it's working for them, and they're creating their own family dynamic that works for them. So kudos for that. What do you enjoy the most in motherhood?
So that's a great question, and I'm probably not you probably don't hear this a lot. But with this growth journey and self-discovery and this constant growing, I have found myself really loving the hard conversations. My son, especially, he's 6, he's in an age right now where he's sharing how he feels. And what makes me proud is that he feels he has a safe enough environment to share his frustrations and, share issues that he's going through. So being able to listen to him give me feedback about what he needs in the moment. I really enjoy that. It's a little harder with my daughter. I don't know if you would agree with girls and boys. But I say that my son is the one that gave me the awareness, and my daughter is the one that tests me and says, "Oh, you're aware. Oh, you're this. Let's see, mom." So with that one, I lose my cool a little bit, but I am really enjoying those, being able to raise our kids in a safe environment. Not to say that mine wasn't necessarily safe, but I was raised with a single mom, and as you can imagine, with 3 kids on your own, that's just a lot. And being able to look back at my mom and saying, like, it was worth it, mom, like, thank you, and we're just moving that needle forward, right, of generational trauma that you mentioned. And it starts with the hard conversations. And for right now, maybe in 6 months or a year, you'll ask me again, and I might be like, Arely, I am done with those conversations. But I really enjoy them because accountability is such a big part in growing and changing. And I think it's really important sometimes for us to get insight on our kids, on how they feel about us, so that we can become better parents for them and people.
Yeah. I really I'm enjoying this conversation because it speaks about how you are, as a person and as a mom and as a human. But what you said right now, that those conversations give you basically feedback, right, to you as a parent. That's a life skill. That's a life skill that you can use at work, right? We're constantly trying to get feedback from our managers. How am I doing? How can I do better? But I think in motherhood, it's so important, because in my situation with communication growing up, it wasn't really like the focus. Like, the communication was not the focus. We come from a family where it wasn't really encouraged, right? But now as adults, we know the importance, a life skill, right, for our children. You're enjoying these conversations, and it's probably not something that maybe other moms would have mentioned it. They are learning so much from us. Not only are they observing, but the way we talk to them and the way that we communicate, it's really setting the stage for how they will communicate in the future, right? So I love that piece. I love the piece that even though they're small, there's a lot of meaning in those conversations that you're having with your kids, and I love that, because although they're little kids, they're just so smart.
Yes, they know so much more that, they get to an age where you're like, they're little. Next thing you know, they start saying things and you're like, oh. And even learning about part of like my self-discovery too, of getting better and finding myself again, was reading books about like our brains and how our brains can mold into whoever, like, you can be depressed and stressed and really have that flexibility to train your brain to get past that and get through that. And, that was something, as I was reading, building pathways in our childhood is so important, because we build those pathways And then that just stays with us until something or someone says, this is not the right way of thinking. And you're just like, oh my gosh. So as I'm learning that, I'm like, okay, let me try to give my kids that are, age appropriate, at least, ways to share these things with them. Boundaries. Like, I didn't know what boundaries were until I was an adult. I was like, what? Yes, I'm available. Yes, whenever. Yeah, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. I'll complain about it. But being able to share, like, drop those little gems, right, for them is it's so key and critical.
And with all the work that you're doing, how do you practice self-care? I know you talked about books, so I would imagine that's probably something that you go back to, but how do you practice self-care?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I would have said, well, I go get my nails done and I get my hair done and I go to the bar and I have a cocktail. And, as again, I go through this transition and self-growth, it looks so different. And I'm able to discover what I need in the moment. So self-care looks like right now I'm burning a candle.
Mm-hmm.
Burning candles is just being able to go into a quiet room. And if I'm overstimulated with my kids, sometimes it's not anything they're doing wrong. There's just a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to go to a room, I put the candle on, I grab a book to read. I listen to podcasts a lot, so yours included. And and I read books. And then the other thing that I've discovered is I like to wander. So I need at least once a week. My therapist says at least once a week you need to go wander. And that's because I need my dopamine. I need natural dopamine, not artificial with social media. So yeah, I need that dopamine to go into stores and be able to seek something. I don't know. So that's what I do. And then in the near future, and therapy is also like self-care.
Mm-hmm.
But in the future, I would love to add working out. That's like one of the best forms of self-care. That's so freaking hard. And eating habits and stuff, those are things that little by little, but sometimes all you have to do is, figure one out, and then step by step.
Yeah, well, you gave some great self-care practices. So I definitely took some notes on self-care practices that you do because I'm constantly trying to find new ways, to do self-care. So
Listen, I have unlocked a level of, if you want to call this self-care, you can, but hear me out. One of the biggest things that I hear as moms is that, like, our house is messy, right? Like, our house is messy. We have a lot going on. I won't talk about laundry. Laundry is something I cannot do. So this will exclude laundry. But put those, if you have headphones or AirPods, or if your birthday's coming up or Christmas, whatever, pop those AirPods in, okay? Either pull up a podcast, listen to this podcast here, or even in the podcast, if you have, Android users, I don't know what that looks like, but if you have Apple, the Apple podcast, search your favorite, whatever topic you want to hear about. And I just zone in. I just listen to I listen to the podcast, and I just, like a machine, clean, 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 clean. And it's been amazing. So, like, my family knows when my headphones go on and I start saying, what? I can't hear you. Mommy's going to start cleaning.
that's an awesome tip. That's an awesome tip. I love this conversation, and I'm just curious to know, what legacy do you want to leave behind, for your children or for future generations, based on the work and the service that you are currently doing?
Yeah, I think from a legacy standpoint, we talk about generational trauma and moving the needle forward. I want my kids and their kids to know that, you know, I am the person that you can say as a mom, right? Like sometimes I am who I am and you can't change that. That's something my mom has vocalized in the past. And I'm the opposite, you know, like you I am the person that the legacy that I'm leaving behind is someone that tried, that even if I didn't get it right, I tried holding myself accountable. I supported people in what they needed. I empowered them. I mean, as a photographer, like honestly, you know, not to be morbid, but I can die tomorrow and be happy because just so many families. I've worked with like over 500 clients and
Wow.
yeah, and I like when I tell you that these photo shoots, I will see my clients 3 years later and we'll pick up right where we left off, you know, and being able to have those photos, you know, I joke with my husband and, you know, when we finalize our will and stuff, I tell him like, when I pass, I want it to be art gallery style. I want all of my prints up, museum, and I want people to just go through the photos and just inspire someone to do the same. And that's why I feel like so adamant about empowering women and empowering mothers, because we're not here for nothing. We're not here for nothing. And and our story is important today, but our story should live on. And I help people start that off.
100% agree with that. For someone who is looking into photography and being a creative director, what what advice would you recommend for someone who is starting or thinking about going into this path?
Yeah, so I would recommend, and this is, let's say I was speaking to younger me, is to really go in understanding the industry and your impact. And if it's, you know, if it's something that you want to do as a hobby and, you know, you love taking pictures like you mentioned, Areli, completely fine. But I think that, you know, once you're starting a business, really looking into the industry in itself to make sure we're not devaluing it, and really knowing our power, and you know, just making sure that if you want to get into it from a business standpoint, that you're not just taking pictures, you know, that you're connecting with people, that you're making someone feel like someone, that you're doing the inner work yourself. Because I do think it's important, like the more we're able to tap into what we're good at and, you know, spread our love that way, um, it just starts with your why, right? Like
Mhm.
figuring out why and then just taking that and running with it.
Yes, thank you for that information. And, part of this podcast is to highlight our powerful women like yourself. So, if you don't mind sharing with us and the audience how we can learn more about you and your work through social media handles that you may have.
Yeah, so on Instagram and Facebook, I am Linette Gary Photographer, and that's LINETTEGARY Photographer. And then my website is LynetteGary.com. And I am looking to roll out a podcast soon. It's, you know, it's going to be geared towards self-value and you know, within us, and it's primarily going to be used for prepping and priming my clients or future clients or anyone that wants to work with me, because I know that when it comes to the inner work and empowerment, I'm just one step. So I'm getting certified to be a mental health ally. And I want
Nice.
to empower people and be able to give them the tools they need to continue getting the help, because it takes a village.
Yes. Well, we can't wait to hear about the podcast. I don't know if you have already a name, but definitely.
No.
Okay, but we will keep up with you and we will bug you until we get the name so that we can hear also the podcast. I know it's going to be awesome. So thank you
I'll
for
definitely
sharing.
have to have you on there.
Thank you, Linette. It's a pleasure to hear about your journey and hearing about how your journey also inspire you to be, who you are today and dropping all these gems to our community. Pleasure to have
Thanks
you
for
here
listening to
today.
the Dropping Gems
Thank you
con
so
Muchos
much for
Colores
having me,
podcast.
Arely.
We have a new
Thank you.
episode every month.
Take care.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave a review and subscribe so you don't miss a beat. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.